If you are a law student or a young lawyer who's interested in working in tech, you would have come across the term product counsel. But what is a product counsel? What exactly do they do? What are the opportunities in the market for a product counsel? And more importantly, if this is a career path that interests you, what are the skills and the knowledge that you need to develop to pursue a career as a product counsel? So in this video, I'm going to break down the role of a product counsel in three parts. First, we will go through an overview of what a product counsel does to understand where they add value in the system. And then we will take a live example of a product and walk through how a product counsel thinks and what his role is in problem solving. And lastly, if this is a career path that interests you, what is the core knowledge and skills that you need to develop to pursue a career as a product counsel? So let's get into it. Let's get started with understanding what a product counsel does. In simple terms, a product counsel is a lawyer that works very closely with product managers, with engineers, with designers to make sure that the company's products are in compliance with applicable laws, they are safe for users, and the suggestions that they are giving is aligning the company with the business goals. So product counsels spend their time embedded very closely with the product development process, right from the inception to the launch and even the post-launch monitoring, which we will see when we come to the example in the next section of how product counsels add value in each stage of the development process. So essentially they're helping answer important questions like what is the legal framework around the product, what are the risks that are associated with the product, what are the solutions to minimize these risks, and how do we make sure that the users feel safe with the ecosystem of the product. Now coming to a real life example, let's take an example of a real product. For this example, imagine that you're working in the in-house team of Zoom, and the business team at Zoom has decided that they want to launch a new feature within the Zoom call ecosystem, which is essentially an automated AI note-taking assistant. What it does is that it observes the meeting, it summarizes the meeting, and sends notes to all the participants after the call. So now as a product counsel, you have been briefed that this is the product, this is the feature that the company is looking to launch. So what do you do? So the first step would be to understand the product in depth. You get into the granular details, you meet the product managers and the engineers and ask specific questions about the feature. So these questions can include even things like understanding how the product is developed. Has it been developed in-house by the Zoom team, or are we licensing it from a third party? How does that license work? You can ask questions about features like, is this feature intended only to send a summary of the notes, or is it going to record the meeting verbatim and send a detailed write-up to everyone? What exactly is the feature aiming to do? And you can also have questions on where is the data stored? The note-taking assistant is clearly processing a lot of data. Where is it stored? Is it on Zoom servers? So once you get to the granular details and understand the feature in depth, then you move on to the next step, which is mapping the regulatory framework. You have all the features, you know how the product works. So now you've got to see what are the different aspects, what are the different legal aspects that will impact the product. So for this example, again, I am taking a very simplified view of how this feature would work so that all of you understand, but it can get quite complicated in terms of how the technology works, right? So for this example at hand, the very first obvious question that you would have to map is to understand the privacy regime around this product. Because again, like Zoom is a company which would ship its products all across the globe. So you would not only have to look at the jurisdiction where you are based out of, you would have to look at the jurisdiction where the product is being sold, which means that you need to develop the ability to be able to understand matters across jurisdictions. So, coming to privacy, you would have to map jurisdictions where you need consent of users before the meeting is recorded. What are the consent requirements like? Do you need to give a notification to each participant? You need to map each of this according to the jurisdiction, which is a very obvious privacy consent concern that could come with this feature. And then you also have your data protection laws. So you have an AI note-taking assistant that is observing the meeting, taking down notes. And these notes could include personal information, it could include sensitive data, it could include confidential information. Again, you need to map all the data protection regimes around the relevant jurisdictions and understand what the requirements are for saving such data. You would have to understand how long you can save the data, what are the rights that users have to delete the data, to modify the data. So you would have to map all of this. These are the very two obvious legal concerns that you can identify from this feature. And once you mapped the regulatory landscape across everything that the feature does, you would go to the next step as a product counsel, which is meet again with the product team. It could be the product manager, it could be the designer, and advise them on what features you should include. Like, for example, you've identified that you require consent of all parties before note taking can commence in a meeting. So how is that done? You need to advise the team that there has to be a clear pop-up where everyone consents. It can't be something that's embedded deep into the terms and conditions and you think that you're going to get away with it. So these are the design choices that you advise on. And then, of course, there are other choices that you advise on where the data is stored. Is it stored on a local server? Is it on a cloud? What is the plan on that with respect to whatever your findings are in your research on the regulatory framework? So now you can see how product counsels are part of the system right from the inception of the idea of the product, where you're understanding what the features are, and then you're advising on granular details with respect to design, what the feature should include, how elaborate they should be. Now that brings you to the next step as a product counsel. Once you finalize what it looks like with the product team, you start the documentation process. So this means that you're drafting the terms of use of the feature or updating the terms of use of the larger Zoom call ecosystem. You're drafting what the consent notices will look like. You are updating the privacy policy of the application in itself. So once you have all this documentation, it is going to be part of the final product that is going to be shipped. And you're going to give the sign off on the product that is going to be launched once you vet all the features that you have advised for. So now you can see how a product counsel is relevant at each and every stage of the product development process, which then brings you to the role of a product counsel post-launch. What does the post-launch monitoring look like? So post-launch monitoring largely comprises of two aspects, right? One is you observe how the users are feeling within the ecosystem. Are there any complaints that are coming in? It's possible that a feature like the consent function is not working properly, or users are confused by what the language in the consent form looks like. So you observe all of this and again advise the product team how they can make alterations to make sure that the users feel safe within the ecosystem. So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is you continually monitor what this regulatory framework that you have vetted looks like, if there are any developments, if there are any changes, so that you can actively advise the product team to keep the product updated from time to time. So that in brief covers what a product counsel does. Again, it's a very simplified version. Some of these products from development to launch take years, which means that there are additional features that are getting added, there are features that are getting removed. So there are multiple iterations that you will be a part of. Now, if this is something that interests you and you want to seriously pursue a career becoming a product counsel, what are the core skill sets and the core knowledge that you need to develop so that you're on the right path? So let's say that you are a law student who is watching this. So what is very obvious as a first step in your core knowledge base that you need to develop is a thorough understanding of technology laws and IT laws. With this also comes the privacy angle that goes in tandem with technology laws. And again, as you can see, most of the products, whether it's developed in India or whether it's developed globally, they have a cross-jurisdictional impact, right? So product councils specifically need to have an understanding of global privacy regimes. You need to understand what GDPR is, what CCPA is, in addition to what your Indian privacy law looks like. And even technology laws, you need to keep up with the developments that are going on around AI. Each jurisdiction is coming up with additional regulations on technology. That is something that you need to be updated with. So a product council, I would say that the way that they can distinguish themselves quite early on is to develop an understanding of what the law looks like across borders. And it's not really difficult. Most of these laws are again based on common law principles. It's just that you need to take the initiative and the effort to read up, even though it's not going to be part of your law school curriculum. So that's your core legal knowledge that you have to develop. And apart from that, you also need to develop a baseline understanding of technology so that you're not lost in some of these discussions, so that you're able to think early on from different angles. So if you are interested in developing this baseline understanding of technology, do leave a comment and I can recommend some free resources that you can get started with. And then you have your soft skills. So you can see that as a product counsel, you're not only interacting with lawyers, but you're interacting with people across teams, right? You have the product team, you have the finance team, you have the business team, and you need to be able to communicate with all of them, which means having the ability to break down nuanced legal concepts and legal requirements into a very simple and understandable format, and also understand what the business and the technology teams are telling you. So that is a set of soft skills that I guess you would pick up over time. But if you are really ambitious and you want to get started on early, start writing articles or start speaking with people that are not lawyers and explain legal concepts to them, and you will be able to pick up the skill of communicating complicated and nuanced legal concepts to a layman. So that's the role of a product counsel in a capsule. And if you are drawn to technology and you want to work at the heart of innovation, this is a great career opportunity, guys, for you to follow. And if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more such content on building a legal career.